Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. Tonight, I've got a really cool podcast for you. I've got Dwayne here with me, and Dwayne had a pretty scary encounter in South Dakota in the Badlands, and I'm going to let him jump on here in just a second and share his story. But if you have an encounter or a mystery you would like to talk about, you can reach me by email at video@jscreativear.com. Dwayne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'll just kind of dive right in. So this encounter, I'm 37 now. This encounter happened at 20 or 21 years old. So it's been a long time, but remember it as vividly as it happened yesterday, I grew up in the country. Closest little town to us was about 750 people. And back then, it was kind of the pastime for us guys to, cruise around back roads and pickups with guns and drink beer and, kind of do that. And kind of a normal thing. This is pre-internet. So this is how we entertained ourselves. Anyhow, on a particular summer night, me and my buddy Edward was doing just that, driving around and looking around and doing things. And we had to stop to use the facilities, the old country road, take a leak. And we pulled over, stopped, real quiet night. Clear open skies, like I said, summer night, pretty calm. At the time, I was driving a '76 Ford F-150 single cab pickup, and so had the lights on. We step out to do our thing, and as we get out, we notice there's a doe, female deer's caught up in the fence, and it's struggling. It's still alive, and it happens quite a bit. They go to dodge through a fence or over a fence. Antelope do it all the time and stuff, and typically what happens, they get rung up in that fence and they end up exhausting themselves and passing away. Well, we had our rifles in the vehicle, and so I said to Edward, I said, we better put this thing out of its misery, and so we don't tear up more fence, and it's not getting out, and you don't want to get up on that thing while it's struggling. It could kick you and all kinds of things. They kind of lose their mind. Anyhow, so I grabbed my rifle out of the vehicle, and I get about 10 feet away from it, and it's just a writhing. It doesn't want to be where it's at. And by God, if a hand come from the other side of that fence and grabbed this female, and it probably about a 3-4-year-old doe, so we're talking about a 200-pound animal, caught up in this triple line fence, and a hand unlike anything I've ever seen him since or ever, grabbed this thing by the head and neck. Just one-timed it. And I'm 6 foot tall, almost 200 pounds. So this was big. I got big old paws on me. This was big. Grabbed this thing by the head and part of its neck, and it tore it out of that fence so hard that it snapped fence line. So the barbed wire was running on the opposite side of where this creature was grabbing this doe. So it had to pull not only just the fence, but it had to pull opposite that and snap wire and yanks it out. And we had the pickup lights on, and I hadn't had my spotlights on the pickup yet. We didn't do that because we was just in shock. I saw it. I know Edward saw it, and it grabbed it, pulled it out of that fence, and I watched it get tall. Well, what we didn't quite understand in the moment was that there was a big washout on the opposite side of that fence. So it was road, ditch, fence line, and then a washout where all this water had gone down. I venture to say, because I hopped down in it, it was about up to my chest. So it was about, 4 foot, little over 4 foot tall or deep is that trench. And I watched that thing raise one leg up over the opposite side of that trench and tucked that doe underneath its armpit like it was a bag of grocery and took off jogging. Not running quite, but jogging. And we're whoa, and so we get the spotlights on in the pickup, and we're and I remember when it went over the opposite side of that washout or that trench or whatever, I just remember saying, holy S word. Just whoa, complete, never, couldn't even imagine. It was just the weirdest, most unsettling. We were so afraid we couldn't even move. We were so afraid that the fight or flight was gone for a second. It was just, you're just in shock. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And so it lurches over there over the edge of the trench, and it's kind of jogging off. I had my rifle on me, and I remember Edward being like, should we shoot it? And I'm like, no, God, no, don't, you ain't gonna touch it with what we got. I mean, the size of this thing, I mean, so I'd venture to say that it's standing in that trench, and the ability for it to grab a 200-pound doe out of a fence, a triple barbed wire fence, and yank it like it was it'd be the extent of me grabbing a pup, It had to have been 11, 12 foot tall. Easy. I mean, the size of its hands alone, I watched it literally just grab the top of that doe's head, and the fingers come down almost into the neck. I mean, it just had a hold of it, just like it was, a pup. And so it had to have been about 11, 12 foot tall, and God knows how much it weighed. It was huge. It was gigantic. And out here in the country, we don't have light pollution. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much starlight, and it was a real big night out, no clouds or anything, and I had the pickup lights on, and it takes off going. Well, on that old pickup, I had big old spotlights on the top of the rack, and so I immediately go over there and fire them on, and I aim it towards it. When I yelled that expletive, when I was like, holy, it turned around, and when it turned around, you could see, not that it had glowing eyes, like in a spectral way, like I had said, and it was like the weirdest orange, amber, yellowish amber, bright, just as bright as the day is long. And saw it look back, so it understood that we were like, whoa, and looked back, took off running, and that's when I clicked the lights on on the rack, and we kind of tried spotting it. And out here, towards the Badlands and that, a lot of sagebrush, there's not much for trees, or, it's a little rolling hills here and there and stuff, and bluffs, and it's out there towards the Badlands. We got it's almost like a steppe desert going into pert near, it looks like a whole different planet. If you've ever seen the Badlands of South Dakota, if you walk in there in the middle of the night out in the Badlands, close your eyes, spin around a few times and open them, you're lost. Everything looks identical. It's really eerie. You just don't go there in the middle of the night. You'll get lost. People die out here. And anyhow, and so as it was trailing through, scrub brush out here, cedar brush, about heck on me, almost up to my hip, and that thing was running through that stuff like it was lumps of grass in your yard. It just, like, the difference between the size of everything else around it was unexplainable. Just crazy to think about. And so it takes off, we're kind of spotlighting it, and it just kind of boogies, and we're like, instantly, we out in the country, you track everything, you look, we could track pretty near any animal. And so we decided to. We got about a mile in, was looking for tracks, was looking for anything that to kind of back up this thing that we both saw. And Edward never said a thing until almost at the very end of this whole situation, when we decided to go back to the vehicle, because that's all he said. He said, I don't know about this, but I'm going back to that vehicle. You can keep going if you want, but I ain't. The only sound that I heard it make was when it grabbed that thing out of the fence. It was just like it kind of just was exerting it, like you go to lift a heavy something, that just kind of went and snagged that out of there. That's the only sound I had heard. And it moved ground I bet it took 10-foot strides. That thing was gone and out like a greased bullet. And that's why we got a mile in and was looking around, and I looked for tracks, I looked for scuffs, I looked for anything, and it had just, it knew exactly how to move around everything, just to be on the edge of the scrub brush and just to be on the edge of the little patches of grass. It knew, and that's like I said, I've tracked several animals, everything from beaver trapping to, I've been on elk hunts, I've been on antelope, everything, all kinds of crazy stuff. And not a mark, not a hair, not a nothing. It was just unexplainable. So anyhow, and he says that, Edward says that, he's like, well, I'm going back to the vehicle. If you want to stay here, that's plumb fine. He said, but I'm out. And I said, no, I think I'm going to go back to the rig too. And that's the only confirmation that I'd ever had that he saw it too, was that. That was the only thing he really said. And I remember my buddy Edward's like 6'8", about 300 pounds. He's a big old moose, big old guy. And I'd never seen him afraid of nothing. And he was sweating, plumb see-through white, shaking like a leaf. Couldn't even hold on to his rifle to put it up into the gun rack in the back of the pickup, in the window. Shaking so bad he couldn't quite get it. And, drove into town. We were done. We were heading into town. We hadn't even drank our beers yet. We were like, it was done. Game over. Whatever we had just saw was, and I'd always been kind of interested in these kind of things as a youngster, and never thought it was like real. But who knows, is kind of my old thing with it earlier. And now I definitively know. And they're like, I don't care what anyone says or what anyone has to say about the deal. And all of us that have seen this thing say the same thing. I know what I saw. And having lived out in the country, and like another deal that I should mention is, I fought wildland fires for Custer State Park out here in South Dakota. I worked in tandem with all the national parks out here, cutting trees down for them professionally and fighting forest fires and stuff. So I've seen about every animal there is to see in the hills. I've tracked them all. I've hunted them all. I've all of it. And I've never seen anything, not even in a zoo. I've been all around. I've seen gorillas behind bars. Nothing was that big and that agile, and I'd never even seen anything close to this deal. Well, anyhow, fast forward a little bit, of course you're not going to run around telling people, oh, hey, guess what? Pretty sure I saw Sasquatch, But growing up around the area, we have, some indigenous reservations here, native reservations around the area, Rosebud and Pine Ridge, to name a couple that are real close to the area where I was, where I'm at. And so I got a lot of indigenous friends. They've been here longer than I have, and so I'd start to kind of probe a couple of my buddies and, say, well, hey, what about, is that a thing? And it's inside their lore. To the point where, and it all kind of matched up. A lot of them said, well, yeah, when the Black Hills of South Dakota, which is more towards Rapid City and Keystone in that area, the Black Hills, what the indigenous people call Paha Sapa, the Black Hills, is that's where they were. And once it was colonized and we were here mining, and building cities and deadwoods out here, and then once a lot of colonialism was going on out here, or whatever, that they were driven out into the Badlands and that portion of South Dakota, because it's barren. It's pert near a desert. If anyone's familiar with South Dakota and the Badlands and that area, right by the reservation there, and that's where they kind of were forced to live. That they had been pushed out of there. They were afraid of people, didn't want nothing to do with them, so then they had decided to go out there, I guess, is the common explanation that I get from my indigenous friends. It's part of their lore, it's part of the thing. I never would have believed it. If I would have never saw what I saw, and, a buddy of mine reached out to me and said, oh, I saw the thing, and it had to have been at least 12 foot tall, and its hands were gigantic. It just pulled this deer right out, and, it had the eyes, and it wasn't like crazy hairy, because we could see it. I saw this thing. It was kind of, I don't know, orangutans kind of have that orangish hair. It was really long and hung off its arms, but you could see a structure to it. You could see how it was built, and it was built like 10 gorillas stacked on top of each other. It was just the biggest, craziest looking deal. So yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. And so my sighting corroborated with, this old lore, explained some of it. I've tried talking to my wife about this, and she's like, oh yeah, going down the rabbit hole again, Dwayne, And so it's kind of like, well, I don't want to always sound crazy. So I kind of, and when I saw your deal, I was just like, here's a good spot to share this, because, if I'm lying, I'm crying. I hadn't shed a tear about this deal. And Edward still won't really talk about it. He wouldn't, if I told him I did this and said, hey, Josh would like to talk to you, he'd say, nope, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, everybody handles this stuff differently, and some people are, they kind of embrace it and try to figure out where to put it. And some people just can't. They don't know what to do with it because it's not the norm. So what do you, how do you think it changed your life seeing something like that?
Well, I mean, I suppose in a way that, like, anybody who goes through anything unexplainable to a degree, it kind of puts in question a lot of stuff. I mean, I remember being like, it put question of my ideas in faith, It put questions of my idea on science and biology. And I mean, like I said, where I grew up, you're in tandem with nature. You're neck deep in it, Coyotes running around right outside the house. You have chickens, you have sheep, you have cows, horses, all these things. Like, you're pretty used to animals, the smells of them, the sights of them, and it made me question so much. And then it terrified me, it took me a bit. And like I said, I'd kind of consulted some of my indigenous friends about this. I was afraid of this thing. I mean, and I was like, I think I was 21, but I had this rational fear. Now, you go out here in the country, middle of the night, you shut your vehicle lights off, you walk about 12 feet away from it, and you're in pitch dark. There ain't no light pollution. Until your natural eyes adjust to that light level, you can't see your hand in front of your face. And so I had this irrational fear. And like I said, earlier, my dad used to put us in a camper trailer in the back of a pickup box trailer. And we'd go out watch cattle while they were calving, all those old heifers having babies, and you have to go out there and help them once in a while, keep eyes on them and stuff. So I know what isolation is, being plumb out in the middle of nowhere, not even a cell phone. This is before cell phones, all this crap. And, so I know what isolation is. And I had a rational fear for a long time about just being outside alone, thinking, what if this thing, and I was afraid of this thing. And I've kind of done some research, I'm interested obviously in the topic since my experience. And, I've heard a lot of people, not a lot of people, I've heard some encounters with people where they say they're violent, they're territorial, they can be mean and aggressive. And from what I talked with my indigenous friends was that, because I couldn't understand, my initial thought to try to reason this thing out was that it was grabbing a meal out of the fence and taking it back to wherever it was so it could eat it. And as I was chatting with all the people said, no. Nope, it doesn't do that. These Sasquatch don't do that. They will hunt, but they don't hunt like we think of hunting. And they're not scavengers. They don't scavenge. So they would have saw what they had explained it to me is that they saw another creature in dire need that was struggling. And the same reason why we stopped is because we stopped to put it out of its misery, or like we stopped to pee and we saw that it was in misery. And so just us being, not wanting to see something suffer, we was going to do that. Well, that's what that creature was doing. It went there to alleviate its pain and to try to help. And so then that, once I heard that over and over again from all my buddies, these people that know about the lore, and then that irrational fear kind of went away because I was like, well, unless I'm really doing something to it, poking it, really bothering it, it's not coming for me. It's not like it's going to remember my face and track me down or nothing. In my estimation, from what I understand, they kind of want left alone. They're not really interested in whatever we got going on. They've probably been around for so darn long that they got their own way of doing pretty near everything. And so it just, I don't know, it changed the way that I thought about a lot of things. I mean, like I mentioned, kind of like my faith. I was just like, wow, what kind of abomination or what kind of abhorrent creatures is God letting crawl around then? Like, why don't I know about this, Well, and I think the answer to that is exactly that. I think in creation, there's all kinds of things we don't know about or understand, and maybe we're just not supposed to, and that's part of the fun.
I would just say, I think that's part of the deal is there's a lot that we can't explain and that we don't understand, and we probably never will understand. But you brought up some really good points. I know in the Native American lore, they're very all in their history. They seem to know a lot more about Sasquatch than we do because they've been here a lot longer. But I always struggled with what to do with it, where to put it, what is it? Because people are obviously seeing something. And sometimes, this is just me personally, but, I think sometimes it ties into the Nephilim. If you ever looked into that, and people have different thoughts. I don't think anybody really knows, but what do you think Bigfoot is? I ask you that. And then also, did you feel or smell anything when you saw it other than just seeing it? Was there a feeling there, and did you smell it?
It was, the feeling I had was, obvious shock. It's just like whenever you see anything that's odd. I've, seen all kinds of goopy stuff that would make me go, whoa, but nothing near that. So it was shock and fear, but not like the type of fear, like I said, that made you go run or fight. It was a fear to the level of like, it didn't matter what you did. You could run as hard as you want. That thing's coming. If it wants you, it's going to get you. So there's no sense running. They ain't going to fight this thing. What are you going to do? Heck, it just plucked a 200-pound deer out of a fence line like it was a bag of grocery. So it was a different kind of fear. Just like the kind of knowing that your brain can't quite know yet, and it's going to take a long time for you to process that out. As far as smell, like I said, I've been around several animals. I'll know all the kind of, whatever. I don't remember there really being like a smell, and if there was, maybe shock took over, and again, there was that little washout. So there was mucky water in there, and, we're on an old gravel road. Heck, the pickup was running. You could, there's all those kind of country scents kind of going on at once, and nothing that really piled out on me. And I again, like kind of looking into this kind of stuff, people always talk about this musky, real skunky, musky, real heavy, scent. And I in my estimation, I think these things know exactly how to not smell. I think that's part of their deal, as they know that humans, they got to know a degree about us. I think that they thought that we were the aggressor, that we had hurt this deer and it was just trying to save it, maybe, or maybe it was there tucked down in that washout there trying to get it out, and then we were there, was trying to like safely get it out, and then it just had to panic and run and take it. But either way, that shows that it has like a high level of intellect. It knows what it's doing. It's not stupid. So that also, yeah, and that also put into question for me. It's like we, growing up around farm animals, different, wild animals, deer, whatever, antelope, all these things, like they don't have that level of empathy or consciousness. There's not like, they do, they're sentient, obviously, but this thing's on a different level. Way closer to us than we are to like a primate. I'm not sure entirely what it is, because I've never seen anything that would even, like I said, you could stack 10 gorillas on top of each other, and that was how muscular this thing was, and just how like the presence of it alone. Its head had to have been the size of a 5-gallon bucket. It was big. So whether it's some kind of like anomaly inside of the animal kingdom that has just learned to, heck, we know spiders exist, but how many spiders you actually see compared to how many spiders there are? Simple as that. People go deer hunting, you might see, how hard is it to go out in the forest, be quiet, and pluck a deer down with with a bow and arrow? You see that just right one here and there, and yeah, people take them out and whatever, but like, you're not, if you were to see all the deer in the United States piled into one area, that'd be shocking, right? But when you go hunting, you only see so many. So I think that's the level of what we're talking about. Like I was kind of mentioning, or way earlier, like we had about 4,000 acres of farm and ranch land. I might have been maybe on 60% of it total. 40% of that, who knows? And there's a lot, and I'm thinking to myself, because I didn't know whether it was some kind of like missing part of the chain of, I don't know if people believe in evolution or whatever, but like there's something there. I've seen it. There's something there that doesn't add up into like the animal kingdom.
It's a mystery, and I think that's the best way to describe it, is a mystery, and nobody really knows, and who knows if we'll ever know until somebody actually goes out and shoots one, catches one. I think that's the only way we're gonna know.
Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't take a pot shot at one of them things. It was just trying to save another animal. That's all it was trying to do. It wasn't trying to maliciously. I mean, it could have flipped over that pickup if it wanted to. I mean, it could have come after us easy, and it wanted nothing to do with us. It wanted to help whatever was going on in the situation and get out of Dodge. And I mean, for that sake alone, I hope nobody ever kills one. I'd rather not have evidence of it. I saw what I saw. I know all of us that see them say, I know what I saw. So I already have confirmation for myself between God and I. I know what I saw.
That's a very believable story, Dwayne, and I appreciate you taking the time to share that with me and our audience. Pretty scary story, and I personally believe you. I've heard a lot of these encounters, and that's a very believable story, and I know it was life-changing, but I want to tell you thank you for taking the time to share that with my audience. If you guys have a mystery or something you want to share with me, you can email it to me at video@jscreativear.com, and we will talk to you in the next episode.